Hold up. I need somebody to love. I just realized there's no way. They've got to be at 13 players, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, they're at 12 on the dot. But they have 5 DPS. Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. I haven't even officially started yet. And here I am just already flaming teams. That's not good. That's not good at all. I have to wait for the Twitch app to realize I'm streaming in order to pull up chat, but it's fine. So, hi, hello. This is technically episode 2, but if you're watching on YouTube, this is the first episode you're seeing because episode 1 was really scuffed. So, instead of making you watch the scuffness, and since, outside of some exact placements, a lot of people don't really care about those last place teams, I'm going to go ahead and just pretend that the first episode didn't happen. And even though this is episode 2, we're covering teams 15th through 11th. We're just going to pretend that this is episode 1. It's going to be great. So, if you're watching on YouTube, you can catch these live on Twitch every single Wednesday. It's not just the power rankings. The power rankings is what we're doing for preseason. And then once the season actually begins, then we'll go ahead and move on from there with, just talking about the week by week, how teams look, things like that. So, interestingly enough, if you're looking at our power rankings, I didn't mean to do that. I need to actually, hold on 1 second. Y'all are going to see an ugly. Properties. Oh god, I have to live edit that, and it's going to look so bad. Whatever. But so, if you're looking at the stream, you should be able to see the teams we already placed. 20th being Valiant, 19th being Chengdu, which people have said is a little too low, but hey, listen, I'm just telling you, Chengdu's not that good. Unless they've made a signing, and I haven't realized it. But then Boston, the Florida Mayhem, and London Spitfire. Now, some people would argue other teams over those, but it's whatever. And there was actually some debate over which teams were the bottom 5. Some people would say the Houston Outlaws. Some people would say Dallas Fuel. But it's interesting because there's pretty much a very clear split between the top 10 and the bottom 10. So because we have those teams placed where they are, there's not really, a bunch of different teams to choose from 11th to 15th. We have the 5 teams you see at the top of the screen. This isn't the order or anything yet because I haven't discussed any of the teams or anything like that, but pretty much these are the 5 teams that are going to round out that 15th through 11th because these are the teams that suck. It's just, it is what it is. So, where to begin? Which of these teams do we start with? Isn't T-Bubbles... Yeah, I was supposed to say, she went to the Valiant. I remember that, because she did some Bro You Whack videos, and it was really cool, and I liked it. But, that's besides the point. We're here to talk about players. Now, let's start with who I think is gonna be 15th, and that's a tough one. Like, looking at these teams, as much as I'm normally dead set on what I'm setting, we might have to bump everybody up. Well, not everybody. We might have to bump London and the Mayhem up and place Dallas down there. So let's talk about Dallas first, because Dallas is an interesting situation to say the least. So, we're looking at their active roster, which they've been essentially re-announcing that they've been re-signing all their players, and Taimu has also talked about how he signed a new contract, but he hasn't officially said it was with Dallas yet, so Taimu could be a question mark. But at the very least, Taimu is with a team, which is interesting. I didn't think that was a thing. I don't know why. I know why, but it's interesting. So, if we're looking at the team at face value, let's say Taimu's back, and they've already announced all the other re-signings. This team that they have is weird. So you have 5 DPS players, not one, not two, but 5. You have Taimu, who can be a superstar if he feels like it, quite literally. You have AKM, who isn't the best, but it isn't the worst. Like, it's serviceable. Like, it's something you can always work with in terms of DPS player. Like, you're not gonna, you know what you're getting when you're getting AKM, and what you're getting is average slash below average. And I only say below average just because there's so many good players in the league now. It's crazy. But then you have Zachary, who we mainly saw pretty much play Brig in May. Obviously, the first 3 stages being Goats, and then once we switched over to DPS, that he only got to play May, and even then they didn't look that good on May, which is why I'm slightly concerned for Zachary being on this team. No offense to the guy, it's just I don't think he's OWL capable. I don't think. Like, obviously he has accolades to his name. The most, of course, being, Fusion University back in 2018, and that's pretty much what got him his net into the Overwatch League, but it's not exactly a player I would rely on, so I guess he's there just because he has a contract. He officially got re-signed, so maybe he can do something. Well, what is his hero pool? Maybe he just hasn't gotten to play his hero. It's Tracer, Sombra, Widowmaker, Genji, Hanzo. So he just hasn't gotten to play his hero pool, I guess, is what we're going to say. I mean, did he play Sombra for them in Goats? I don't know if he played. I don't know if he played the Sombra in Goats or not, but he was, like, that would be the most notable. Everything else on your hero pool, you were forced to play Mei, so maybe you're not a projectile player. Maybe you had to pick it up. So you can't really give too much crap for anything like that. Maybe. But then the new signings, and this is where it gets interesting. This is where it gets fun, shall we say. So we have Decay in, I think it's Doha, not Doha, Doha. So Decay, Mr. $150,000 himself. He was supposed to be the Sinatra of 20. He was supposed to be the Sinatra of this year, or not this year, but last year. Gets signed for a huge amount of money. I think he was available from the jump because of February 27th, but Tracer, Genji, Widowmaker, Hanzo, Doomfist, so probably just a hit scam player that can flex. Another flex, probably your replacement for Zachary. Interesting that he got chosen for All-Stars. I didn't, no offense to him, I just didn't think people cared about Decay that much. Maybe a Korean audience, maybe. But so we have, it's just an interesting situation with Decay because while he is a good player, he was not worth what people were paying for him, or the alleged rumors that people were paying for him. So I kind of like the fact that he's on Fuel, that we've traded him for not Gamsu, OGE, because this is a player that can do something, whereas Zachary isn't. So pretty much Zachary's just going to take up a bench slot now, which you don't really need 5 DPS, so maybe you try to pawn Zachary off to somebody like Boston who might take it or something like that. And then finally the last DPS is Doha, which is the only technical new they've made new signings by trading players, but the only new one for this team coming up from contenders, and he played for Element Mystic, and Element Mystic, obviously, as we know, went on that tear. Everybody always likes to talk about the, what's it called? The Atlanta Academy, because they were the ones that ran through, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, they look so good. But we have to remember Element Mystic was the one that won all of that, and obviously he was there with them for a lot of high points, some low points, second place. But second place still isn't that much of a low point, especially to run away. So you could potentially be seeing a very good DPS player here. I haven't heard a whole lot about him, but he once again kind of fills into this niche flex / projectile hole. And so Key does the same thing that Decay does. So possibly it's one of those things where you can rotate them in and out, which I'm more than happy to do. However, neither of these players really play hit scan. So that once you're going down to hit scan again, you're being forced back to AKM or Taimu. Because Zachary doesn't even have it in his wheelhouse. So if Taimu can pop off once again, I hate saying used to, but he had some good performances this year as well. If Taimu can pop off again and find that little niche and get it moving, then Taimu, like a Taimu Decay slash Doha DPS line isn't actually the worst. But it's just a matter of Taimu popping off, because if he doesn't, then you're stuck with AKM, and while AKM is good, Taimu has the potential to be that carry, whereas AKM is just going to remain at average. And so it's interesting, and because of the fact that you have 5 DPS players, you can't even try to run internal scrims or anything like that. So that's one problem, because I think they are at the 12-man roster limit. They are. So it gets interesting. Interesting. Now, in terms of a tank line, Mickey is never getting played. For some reason, is still on this roster, because he just is. Sure. If we're looking at the other tanks, we have Note, Trill, and the most notable signing is Gamsu. Now, regardless of what meta we go into, clearly what they want to run is Note and Gamsu, which is not terrible. We've seen it work in the past, obviously. That was the core that Boston played around in Season 1, but there was a lot of other pieces on that team that made it work, that made it good. So I don't know if Gamsu Note is still as good as we want it to be, because we have to remember that was still primarily dive, where Gamsu was playing Winston, a favorable hero, and Note was playing D.Va, a favorable hero. We don't know Note's Sigma. We don't know... Well, we know Gamsu's Orisa barely because of the game that Shanghai had against... My goodness, I choked on my words. That Shanghai had against London. Went to 8 maps. Phenomenal performance from Gamsu. Could not have done more type of scenario. So I don't mind the tank line at all. I guess if you want to argue it, you have Trill as a backup. But Trill seems to be more of just kind of a scrim partner type of deal. So I wonder, because a lot of teams seem to be moving to internal scrim partners for 2020. So I wonder if there will be a trade, if they're going to try to trade away Zachary and get another support or something like that. But it'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of that. I have to check something real quick. I'll check it later. The reason I hate pausing like that, but the heat has been turned off in my house for a few days because it quite literally froze, and now I'm smelling it, and I'm smelling this. It's a smell that the heat make. Not the heat makes, but when it's coming out, whatever. I sound like a rambling idiot. Finally, support line. Unko, Closer, and Harry Hook. Unko and Closer. Closer is a good support and deserves to be in the league, but I don't want him for this team. My issue with Closer is he is too aggressive. He is too I'm going to go do my own thing, and y'all are just going to have to live with that. Which works. It's very rarely works. Well, not rarely, but it works a good portion of the time. If you're the flex support. Closer's the main support. He's the one playing Lucio, Mercy, things like that, where you're the main one that's got to keep everybody alive. And so, to have that kind of go off and do its own thing constantly, it's not just a one or two thing, it's something that Closer's noted for doing, and he didn't really start doing it until he got with Dallas, so I wonder if it's they're trying to feed into his playstyle, or maybe he's just tired of the team or something like that. But so I would want them to trade Closer because I feel like Closer could work on a Korean roster and, get somebody who can be that good support for you. Raucous. Well, not Raucous. I didn't mean Raucous. I completely mentally blanked. There's some Western support. I couldn't remember his name. There's a Western support. I can't remember his name. Like, literally, as stupid as it is, I would want Boink for this team for the pure and simple fact of Boink at least will stay with the team, which isn't going to help a whole lot. Closer has a little bit more potential, but Boink at least stays with the team, so it's reliable. But then the hesitation with the Raw. So, obviously, we pointed out a few different flaws with things like that. But now my biggest concern is, like I said, they're at that 12-player limit, and we're a month away from the season starting. And they host one of the first homestands. They host them in New York are the first two homestands of the season. I don't honestly see them changing anything. I think they just stick with this and just go. But, I would want, unless they're under contract and you physically can't get rid of them, I would drop Harry Hook. I would drop Mickey. Neither of these players are playing anytime soon. Just to free up roster slots, give yourself a little bit of mobility. If Taimu is re-signed to you, congratulations. Rock out with Taimu. Do what you must. I would want to sign, I wouldn't even want Trill on this team either because that's just another slot taking up. You can have him as a backup, but Gamsu's reliable. Gamsu's dependable. I'm more than happy with Gamsu on this roster. But I would want another flex or a main support. It doesn't even have to be Western. Closer is too aggressive, and unfortunately it doesn't play into this team's style. I feel like this team can do a lot better. I feel like this team could do really good, has the potential to, if they play kind of New York's known of style, which they're probably abandoning a season, but where they just play passively and wait for the other team to kind of make a move and they counter react to that. I feel like this team could do a lot with that kind of style, the only issue being Closer. Because like I said, the flex DPS situation with Decay and Doa, that's a phenomenal DPS to rotate in and out, but you can't play both of them at the same time. You're stuck with playing Taimu or AKM. And if Taimu's popping off like old Taimu, then I am more than happy with this line. But also, you have so many nationalities on this team. It's so mixed, especially going into the homestand format. You're calling it homestands. Unless they're playing Paris Eternal, I don't think AKM and Unco will ever be in France. And things like that. Also, I think one of the advantages they'll have is that Dallas, I'm pretty sure, is signed up to host 5 homestands. So, because it's MB, they have money. So, the question becomes, can they capitalize on the fact that they're not going to have to move, that they can pretty much just sit in Texas for most of the season? And I don't think they will. So, even though we still have 4 other teams to talk about and go through, I already kind of want to put them 15th, and putting them 15th is high. Like I said, I have been, I was thinking about it, I'm looking at it, and, Dallas Fuel wasn't really on my roster at all, so I didn't think to put them in the bottom 5, but part of me wants to move London and Mayhem up, and then put Dallas down at 17th, just because this roster has potential. It's just a matter of you've got a full roster, so you either need to drop somebody, which you can drop somebody as long as they're not under contract. Mickey, Harry Hook, and possibly even Taimu are all just taking up roster slots that you could use to slide somebody else in and get some other work done. Same with Trill. You don't really need Trill on this roster. Gamsu's Winston is fine, and Trill, I'm pretty sure, is known of as a Winston not a Winston one trick, but known of for Winston. Apparently his Wrecking Ball is serviceable. Sure. He was a TPS. Tried out for Overwatch League teams on 300 ping. Sure, Trill. Good job. Because you're playing from Australia, which, by the way, I feel bad for anybody in Australia. If I had a penny to my name, I would donate. I literally do not have a penny to my name. It's great. But so I think that might be the move, is I know it's a tad bit early to do it, but we're going to just do some live editing, because why not? We're going to... Bro, what the heck? Okay. So we're going to put fuel here, and we're going to move the Mayhem and the London up. So congratulations, London. You've made it from the bottom to slightly above the bottom. Mayhem, London. So, yeah. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Now, looking for number 14. I don't... Like, Fuel was kind of an easy pick out. Now, in terms of number 14... I don't even know which of these teams I want to talk about next. You know what? We're in Texas. Let's stay in Texas. Let's talk about Houston. I feel so much like they run into the same exact problem as Dallas, where they're just at a full roster and they need to drop some people. Starting with Cool Matt. Cool Matt, no offense, you've done what you can. You were 2017. You were the hottest shit all around, and you've dropped. You dropped insanely. So you just kind of need to pack up your stuff and go. No offense. I love how I started talking about Houston, and then I got a notification for Jake going live. Coincidence? I think not. Alright, we'll look at... Actually, what does Fuel's coaching situation look like? Real quick. I mean, as much as I want to believe in Arrow, Arrow didn't do a lot last season. They picked up Young. Has Young done anything? Oh, he was the Element Mystic coach. Oh, that might be a nice little boost for you. That might be 16th instead of 17th. Just an assistant coach, though. I mean, Arrow did good with the World Cup team, but at the same time, that could just come down to Sinatra and Corey's skill for World Cup, so who knows. Alright, but the reason not Washington Justice, what? Houston Outlaws. The reason you always want to talk about coaches is because this is where the Messiah is born for Houston. Is everybody and their mother jumps out of a window when they're like, oh, all of Houston problems are over. Harsha is your head coach. What is he going to do for you? I mean, it's just the unfortunate truth of the situation. Harsha is going to be a phenomenal coach for this team, I think. The only problem is Harsha's not Jesus. He's not going to be able to salvage a whole lot. So now if we look back to the team itself, besides the whole everybody's hyping up Harsha, we have Cool Matt taking up a roster slot. We have Boink. We have Boink and Raucous, who are now taking up roster slots, and this is a move a lot of people wanted Houston to make, and so they decided to ball out the money to get it, which I'm very, very, very happy about, is to get Jexay, which played for Seoul for a bit. I mean, you know, you played for Seoul, there's not a whole lot there, but you did look phenomenally well. The only issue is Seoul decided to play somebody else. You now have Jexay Rappel as your support line, which is honestly a pretty good support line. Like, I wouldn't put him into top 5 or anything, but it's a solid middle-of-the-pack support line. It's something you can rely on and not have to worry about at all. So, that's great. Raucous and Boink are now taking up roster slots because, well, not Raucous. Boink, unfortunately, he served his time. He's done what he can, but he's not the best in the world. He's not ever been the best. His Mercy's been kind of okay-ish, whereas his Lucio was just kind of there. Raucous is at least a good backup, even though he is Western, so maybe he doesn't gel as much or anything like that, but Raucous is a pretty good support, so it's always nice to maybe just keep him around just to play safe. And then we have Muma as your only main tank. That's a problem, because it's Muma. I say that in a terrible way, but I love how Symmetra is listed under his signature hero. Why? I hate this. about chocolate almond milk. Understandable. Understandable movement. Anyway, the only issue with him being your only main tank is there's no backup, and well, he's not bad, he's not good. He's more middle of the pack than a lot of people give him credit for. I think he gets bashed a little bit too hard. But he's definitely middle of the pack. I could definitely argue that. Now, another saving grace that people are saying will save this team and make it so much better is Meko. Meko is a good off tank, and he brings flexibility. Houston's problem used to be that they had no flexibility with their tank line because their off tanks were Cool Matt and Spree. Cool Matt was a D.Va one trick, and Spree was a Zarya one trick, which means whichever one of them they played, you knew what they were playing. That's an issue. And it's kind of crazy that something as simple as that is an issue. But I guess they have contracts, because if you look, these are all players from the original roster that they just kept. Like, you have 6 of your roster slots taken just by the original 6. Sure. But so, Meko brings that flexibility, where Spree, I would still keep him around. I feel like he's been trying to learn D.Va. His Zarya is still really good. So Spree is somebody I keep around, but I definitely would drop Cool Matt. Now in terms of the DPS lineup, like, jeez Louise. It looks so stacked, but it's not. That's the issue. That's the issue with the DPS lineup. So we have Linkser, obviously, phenomenal hit scan player. Not, he's barely on the outside of being super duper insane crazy or anything like that, but he's not bad. He can hold his own. We then have, if we're going down the list, Dante, phenomenal player. I really enjoy Dante on this team just because he provides. What's really interesting to go and look back is anybody who came from Shock, wherever they end up, they did very well for that team. Obviously, the one exception you could argue is Sleepy, but Sleepy still was a standout player on Justice, even though Justice sucked. It's unfortunate, but it's what happened. But everywhere the Shock boys go, they do well. So Dante, being signed over to this team, being able to do a whole heck of a lot. I like keeping him on this team because he's a nice, flexible-ish player. Yo, look at the Goofy Goober. Dante. I love these, Super is idiot. But I like these little flex capabilities that he has. But then if we're looking through, we have Hydration, Blase, who pretty much play the same things. The only difference is Blase's a more vocal person, whereas Hydration just kind of sits there stoically. And the argument can also be made. I love reading this trivia. I'm sorry. It's stupid. It's stupid. I know Hydration has said this before and I heard it, but it's stupid to me to listen to. Or read again, rather. Yo, I always forget the Gladiators main stage layout. We're looking at a lot of former Gladiators as well today. Interesting. We might have to talk about the Gladiators soon. But so yeah. Hydration also has the capability to flex to tank, which is kind of nice. We saw it kind of used in the playoffs a bit. They would randomly sub him in to play Sigma, and they would kind of take advantage of being able to throw their opponents off with something like that. So it is an interesting little backup. Word on the street is that he's actually going to be playing tank, even though he's a role DPS instead of flex. So maybe they have a backup main tank, air quotes around all of that. But like I said, between Hydration and Blase, Hydration is the better player because they do pretty much play the same things. Obviously, with the exception of Hydration being able to play tank. But Blase is a very vocal person, and this is something I didn't really think about, but then I was watching an episode of Plat Chat where they were talking about Houston Outlaws, and this team no longer has a leader of any kind. Jake would have been the leader, but Jake decided to up and go and cast because he was tired of getting shit on, which I don't blame him. And I think Raucus should do the same if Raucus has any talent, but I don't know. We'll see where that goes. So, how do you fix Houston? Or not even how do you fix Houston? How does Houston do with this roster as it is? And the word of the day is mediocre. You're going to underperform. You're going to be outside of playoffs. You're probably going to be sitting around. There's 28 games in a season. 12-16 would be my, if we were randomly started doing guesses, 12-16 would be how I would size up Houston, just because they have potential to win games. However, it's just such a mishmash of everything. And then not counting the fact that you have to travel and things like that all need to be taken into account. I think your sport line is phenomenal. I think that was a great place to start. Muma Meko, honestly, like, a lot of people say get a backup for Muma. I'm cool with Muma doing his own thing. Maybe you have Hydration play Reinhardt if you need to and let Muma stay a monkey one trick. Who knows? My only concern is the DPS because, well, not my only concern. My concern in terms of rosters DPS because you play Dante and who? But if you play Dante and Linkser, then you have no vocal. If you play Blasé, then you're playing with a weaker player, but you get that vocal leader in game, which I think you need for this team, because there's nobody on this team to be that vocal leader in any capacity. So, how does this team win? They don't. That's, Mentacus. Oh no, the poor lad. He retired from being a content creator. He got moved from player to content creator, and then retired from being a content creator. That poor lad. Is he playing for anyone? Is he doing anything? He's not doing anything. He plays Apex Legends for Team Liquid. There you go. He's actually doing something. I'm proud of him. Decided to take Apex and ran with it. Alright, so in terms of a lineup, do I just put this team 14th and call it a day? Like, 14 feels high, but I don't want to move London any higher. And I don't want to move the Mayhem any higher either, because this team I could see doing better than both of them. Granted, if London, well, because I'm looking at the other team. Yeah, Houston's got to be 14th, unfortunately. That's just how it be. 14th, Outlaws. I'm fine with putting them there simply for the fact of they have a chance to pop off with this roster, but it's going to be hard, and it's going to be to watch it all happen. So, Houston, you're going to move down to 14th. Who do we talk about next? Do we talk about the Paris problem, as I like to call it? Which, fun fact, Paris made a recent signing, quite literally yesterday, of FD God, who played at World Cup. And it looks like somebody bought into World Cup hype again. We did that with Fusions, and look where that got us. And, like, he is a main support, which is interesting. Gaudio, Speedio, Helio, and Baptio. Of course, so we're just adding EO to all of his account names. Which, if I recall correctly, is Cruz the flex support, or is he no, he's the main support, right? He plays Genji. Badass. There you go. But so, instead of just roasting random picks, how about we actually talk about the team? Because I'm being bad. So, on this team, which I did cover them a little bit last time, because I thought they were going to be at the bottom, but they're better. They're just better, but not by a lot. So now we have, if we're looking at this in terms of, let's just break it all down, DPS players. Soon, Nico, which I can't even say anything past Nico because that's just letters. Z, which I don't understand why you signed Z. But then Sparkle. Sparkle is the big boy. He is the one that we're all hyping up, which it's interesting because if you're looking, like, Sparkle in all regards, could have gone to Houston, or not Houston, Dallas. Oh my god, if he had gone with Doha, and we just dropped, because what's the homeboy play? Oh, might help if I had. Because he does, well, no, he plays the same kind of thing that Doha does, so never mind. Never mind. Never mind. I'm off the rocker. Don't mind me. So if we're going through the team once again, so Sparkle's the big boy, though. He's supposed to hard carry this team once he becomes of legal age. Now we have to click on his profile yet again because I didn't look at his age. But May 31st, 2002. I'm pretty sure if we're looking at the Overwatch League season, which starts February 8th, right here, that's what? So February 8th, that's 1 month right there in March, 2 in April, 3 in May. And he's at the end of May. So that's 4 months you can't play with Sparkle. Which I'm pretty sure people said was like 2/3 of the way through the season or just shy of. So Paris has to essentially survive until then to get a god player on their team. Now the question is, will he be a god player when he comes in? A lot of people hype him up. Seen his gameplay, you know what you're getting with Sparkle, and what you're getting is insanity. So, will they live to get to that point? Will they get wins? And the question is, the answer is maybe. Because you have, essentially, you're going to be rotating soon, Nico and Z. Z, I'm pretty sure, it's just pretty much a hit scan player. Played a little bit of Zenyatta, fun fact, in case anybody did not know. Also from Element Mystic, nice to see all of Element Mystic getting picked up in some capacity. So he'll probably rotate in and out with Soon. The issue being is then if you want a flex DPS, you're playing Nico. And he's your Genji, he's your Doomfist, because I don't think Soon is hit scan. He doesn't really flex over to anything else like that. So, what do you do with that? Because ideally, you go to a double sniper meta, and Z and Soon can just kind of pop off. But Nico is clearly the weak link of the DPS. He's not that good. I don't understand why he's on a team, but you're stuck with him now. Because you have to have that second DPS because of 222 lock. So, moving forward, they essentially are going to have to hard carry. And I don't think this team can hard carry. Because next, if we look at their tank line, we have Benbest, No Smite, and Smex. No Smite, didn't you play for Toronto? No, you played for Spark. You were a bench player for the Spark. That's what it is. Yeah, you were because whenever... Yeah, you came in if Gouche's leg was broken or something. So No Smite's kind of untested, I guess would be the best way to put it. And Benbest is your other main tank. So, in terms of off tanks, you have Smex. And Smex, didn't really, as you see here, I don't remember doing a whole lot at the World Cup. Obviously, I've never heard the name or anything like that, so not really any pop-off performances. We also have Hanbin, who I think February 20th, so I think they might have to play, one match without him so there's 2 weeks of games before he becomes available, so if Paris rolled the lucky die, then they don't have to play without him. So Hanbin is probably who you're opting to for your flex support, off tank. The question of the matter is, if you're playing Hanbin, then you probably are going to play No Smite a bunch, and Benbest's going to have to take a backseat, but it also depends on what meta we go to, because if we go to, Orisa Sigma, as we're seeing, the issue is a lot of these players are untested on Sigma, because all we saw, pretty much any gameplay outside of Contenders that we saw of... If any gameplay we saw of Sigma was either playoffs or Contenders or World Cup. And Smex, like I said, he didn't really impress. He was just kind of there. Didn't do a whole lot. So, Hanbin's where all of your eggs are. Benbest is a below average main tank. No Smite is he's clearly below Gushue, but I'd say he's definitely a middle of the pack in terms of average main tank play. Um, Probably should hopefully be able to pick up the Orisa, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of team coordination issues, and I don't understand. I don't understand what the plan is essentially for these team coordination issues and how they're going to be solved. If we're looking in terms of roster size, they have an 11-man roster with Sparkle and Hanbin obviously being underage. Which, by the way, how the hell they signed Sparkle of all the teams, I don't know. But Gray and Hip, they're both flex support, I believe. Yeah, plays a little bit of Widowmaker. Gray, I remember seeing at World Cup, looked okay. And then Zenyatta Ana doesn't even play Moira. Monka S, dude. But so Paris essentially, their whole game plan is to live until Sparkle. But I don't even think Sparkle saves them. Because once Sparkle comes in, it just means that Nico doesn't have to play anymore, which is thank goodness. But who do you play alongside? Like, do you just play Soon? Or, I mean, you can play Z just that because you have that pre-existing synergy, I guess. And Soon becomes a bench player once more. But so you're just going to have, what, a Korean tank line and DPS, and you're going to have 2 Western supports, because you're probably going to end up running Cruz and Gray. That's your best options, and even then, those aren't the best options in the league. Those are average. They both have potential to, like, pop off and do something, but, like, not enough to the point where I would bank money on them or anything like that. So, at the end of the day, I think, unfortunately, I feel like I'm accidentally doing this in order, like, looking at these teams. But yeah, Paris, 13. Like, 13th feels high, but looking at how bad the other teams are, if you can just make it to Sparkle, if you can make it to May, whatever it is, let's look at the exact date one more time. May 27th? May 31st. If you can make it to May 31st, you might squeak into playoffs. And then from there, you might be able to hard carry yourselves through. But Sparkle's the question mark. And then you also can sign one more player, so maybe you sign... I mean, Hanbin's probably going to be a reliable off-tank. But you probably don't even want another off-tank, so... Maybe you just sign a better main tank than Ben Best or No Smite, but who knows. Maybe this will give Ben Best and No Smite the opportunity to become specialists in an idea. Like, Ben Best can just play Reinhardt, and No Smite can kind of start playing Orisa. Who knows how this team could gel, everything like that. Who do we go over next? Let's go over Washington. Let's just keep rolling down the line, because why not? Now, this team has an interesting situation, because you look at this team and you say, oh, look, it's Roar. And he's also got his former coach, John Galt, behind him, who's now the head coach. Oh, I didn't know he was from Singapore. That's interesting. John Galt has openly come out and said that Roar is essentially going to be a coach. However, they didn't want to limit their options, so since they had roster space, they're going to keep him signed as a player. So, a lot of people have been banking on Roar to play, and Roar was going to be combined with, I think, Lolshis is the off-tank in this scenario. Nope, I am wrong. I guessed poorly. Elevote is going to be who he's... Everyone thought this was the combination that we were going to have. And these players got signed to play back in GOATS, but unfortunately, they just never made it to the U.S., so, everyone thought Roar was going to play. Roar's pretty much going to be in a coaching position. Unless something changes. Unless some random nonsense happens. So, Elevote and Lolshis. Swedish tank line. I've seen a Swedish tank line before. It was called Season 1 Florida Mayhem. They got replaced by Koreans. It's honestly weird to me, looking at this team, just because... This is one of the few teams that started out as a Korean team and then went Western. And now it feels like they're kind of stuck in between Korean and Western. Not that either is a bad thing. It's just a matter of, like, picking and choosing and things like that. like you said, we have no official gameplay on Elevo or Loshish in this kind of Orisa Sigma meta, so we don't even know if Loshish can play Orisa, if Elevo's practice Sigma at all, because they haven't even been in contenders, because they've been, like, we saw them at World Cup, but World Cup can only weigh so much. And even at World Cup, they didn't look impressive. They were pretty much kind of carried by the rest of Sweden, and even then it wasn't that hard of a carry. No offense to Sweden. I love y'all. Season 1 Florida Mayhem was my favorite team. And then they went Korean, and I left. Because I wasn't with it. I wanted my Swedish boys. But they have more than just a tank line. They have the DPS line of Corey, Stratus, and Tituba. I think it's just Tuba, but Tituba. Now, Corey, oh my god. Like, Corey's absolutely cracked from what everybody has said. Like, and, I mean, you can look at it, not only World Cup, but just in Stage 4. Like, the man is absolutely insane when it comes to his tracking. Phenomenal tracking. However, his game sense is a little bit not there. A coach like John Galt, or Galt, is it Galt or Halt? It's Galt. It is Galt. A coach like Galt can kind of fix that, though, and I love that, because it forces discipline, whereas Corey was maybe playing a little bit more loose, play a little bit more kind of vibey. Stratus is interesting, because all we saw him play was May, and his May looked really good. But you can't only play May. I mean, you can right now, because May is a very overpowered hero right now. But I feel like this team could get carried by the meta a little bit, as long as Elevosh and Loshish don't get run over, because the rest of their team is very competent. But if we have a meta switch, I mean, I guess that's why Tuba is here on the team. What is he say? Genji Doomfist. Okay, so maybe he plays the more standard stuff in terms of flex. But, you know, Stratus, I'm pretty sure, Pharah, Genji, May, Doomfist, Junkrat. I mean, we didn't see a whole lot of the Doomfist. We didn't see a whole lot of... I mean, I think we saw his Pharah a little bit, and it looked fine, but at the same time, you're only playing Pharah for like a minute, so maybe just one barrage looks really good, because that's all you have. Like, Stratus Tuba is weird to me as what you're going to have to rotate out around Corey. Like, I would just want 2 Corys. Even though Corey doesn't play, you know, Genji or Pharah or anything like that, his tracking's just insane. Like, I would just want 2 Corys in that position. But Stratus can work. It gives you that more chill vibe. But I feel like maybe you would play Tuba if you didn't want to be chill, if you wanted to actually enforce something, and maybe that's the direction you want to go. And in terms of the support line, all you have is Arc and Aim God. But I'm okay with only having Arc and Aim God, obviously, albeit unless an injury or something happens, in which case you need a backup. But Arc, exceptional player, proved his worth on NYXL, proved his worth last season with this team, even though they didn't win a whole bunch. Still did still did the dang thing on Lucio. Aim God, phenomenal player from Boston. Obviously, there's been some mumblings that he isn't exactly the nicest person to work with, but essentially, John Galt, the head coach, I keep bringing it back to him, because he's going to have to be the one to be in charge of this team. He's going to have to be the one to sit them down, be like, alright, this is what you're doing. And I feel like Roar's going to be able to help with that a lot, and force that, like, serious team atmosphere. And what I love the most about this team is that if an issue comes up, they can fix it, because they only have 8 players. They have 4 more slots where they can just sign somebody for the 50K, be like, hey, you get in here mid-season, help us with this. If any good flex DPS comes available, I'd want that signed. If Elevo and Loshish get rolled over as a tank line, then they're going to need a whole new tank line, and that's an issue. But at the same time, you can't really say a whole lot about them, because all we have is Team Sweden. And to be fair, like, it was not good, but it wasn't terrible at the same time. You know what I'm saying? So World Cup still isn't an indicator of a whole heck of a lot. You were playing around a different team. possibly had different plans. And so, like, I believe in this Washington team. Like, I feel like if they're at their very peak, like, if they all hit their stride and they're all doing everything that they're supposed to, this could be, like, a top 10 team. Obviously at, like, 9 or 10, but a top 10 team. But they could also... I don't see them dropping a whole lot either. Like, the worst I could see this team doing is, like, 15th. So, I feel like... But then you have Toronto. And Toronto's an interesting one as well. So, before we place Washington... Because right now my instinct is to put them 12. Before we place Washington, we need to look at Toronto. Which, look at all of... This is all of this change... Hold on, this is when Toronto was formed. And this was, the original team and things like that. These are all of the different changes that Toronto did last year. Now, granted, a lot of it was, like, for example, from October 23rd down, it was just, they signed on different days, so whatever. Then it was just, like, one day apart each, or they announced them one at a time. Who really cares? But look at this. This, to me, looks like a team that didn't know what the frick they were doing, and so they just started chucking things at a wall and hope something stuck. And, like, geez Louise, that is insane to me. But besides the point now, it's in the past. We have a lovely, this is 9-man roster, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9-man roster. You have Rocky, who's on two-way, so you're probably not going to see a whole bunch of him, but the option's still there if they ever need to play him. I guess that's kind of just a backup in case, somebody dies. Which I'm pretty sure he's a main support. I feel like I'm guessing wrong. Yeah, he is a main support. Lucio Mercy. Always fine. Always fine to see. But if we're looking in terms of the rest of the team. So, in terms of support line, let's start there. Kareev and Kellex. Now, a lot of people are down on Kellex. Oh my gosh, wait. Is Kellex? Yeah, he's from Denmark. I was blanked for a second. A lot of people are down on Kellex. I think Kellex was phenomenal Season 1. Season 2, he didn't look as good. That's just because Boston didn't look as good. I think he can do a lot of work with this team, especially with Kareev by his side. Kareev, maybe a little bit overpraised, but still a phenomenal player, and I think he's going to do a lot for this team as well. Oh, and this is something they... Oh, this is something they literally did today. That's kind of crazy. Do they need help on Montreal Rebellion? Hold on, I want to deviate real quick. Oh my god, they don't have a roster. They don't have a roster for it. That's why. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, they have like 18 different teams. That's the problem. Anyway, I digress. Support line, Kareev, Kellex. I am phenomenal with that as long as they can find a way to communicate, which Kareev's English is starting to get better, as we saw with, the fun he was doing with Valiant, things like that, so I believe in it. Maybe not the best support line in the league, obviously, but definitely a good middle-of-the-pack support line that can work. In terms of a tank line, a lot of people are not as high on Nevix as I am, but once again, I am a firm believer in anything that the Shock shits out, other people pick up and they make it, and they become the messiah of their team. I mean, we saw what Baby Bay did last year for Atlanta. We saw what Sleepy did. We saw Dante. Like, pretty much anywhere the Shock fell off into, they were able to pop off. So I fully believe in Nevix. Plus, we got to see a little bit of him in the playoffs. Whenever they get to that map 4, they were already rolling, and so they would just play him. And he looked on par with, Choyobin in terms of at least Sigma. So that's always something nice to see, is that they can play at that level. It just depends on if that will transfer over. Beast is an interesting one, because he was with Fusion University. Fusion University wasn't too terribly hot this last season, at least in Korea. No, they didn't do the gauntlet. But so, it's interesting of all of the tank players that he's the one that came up. But at the same time, tanks are kind of scarce, especially if you're looking for specifically a Western tank, which you are based on this team. You're not really looking for any Korean or Chinese players. Looking at this, you want an English-speaking roster is what you're going for. Where was that? Okay, so with Beast, and then obviously Nevix, the only downside is that's all you have in terms of them, so they're there. Go for it. Then your DPS line. You have Surefour, Agilities, Logics, and Manganshu, who's now on two-way, so you're probably never going to see Manganshu, which kind of sucks because a lot of people were hype about Manganshu and things like that going into the year, and he showed off a little bit, but unfortunately, I'm okay with the fact that he got moved back down to contenders just because he has skill and he has potential, but it's not at that level just yet. So you're looking at Logics, Agilities, and Surefour, and the immediate downside to this is who's playing what. Logics, known pretty much primarily for hit scan, can flex over to that Tracer. The tracking's pretty decent. Logics is pretty much going to have to be the star player of this team, which he has the potential to do, but Logic's going to have to be the guarantee play, and then you're splitting time between Agilities and Surefour, and I'm not really sure if I like that, because both of them are, like, Agilities gets a little bit more height. There was the whole in and out meme, we get it, ha ha ha. Agilities, unfortunately, is not that good as a player. And then Surefour is a little bit overhyped. A lot of fans like him. He's a very likable person. I like Surefour as at least the face he presents to the public. However, in terms of a player, he's a little bit below average, unfortunately. But at the same time, there was some weird situations happening with the Gladiators last year, so maybe that lended him to not being at his full potential, because in 2018 we saw him, be this dominant DPS player, one of the better ones in the league, so maybe he can get back to that. Who knows? But all in all, this is just pretty much like a likable team. Like, there's nothing about this team that I would... if you handed me this team and told me I had to root for it, or this was the team I had to bank on to win a game, I wouldn't be upset. Obviously, it's not my first choice, but I would look at this and I could see it. I could see this team doing things, but at the same time, I could also, I don't see them failing. I don't see them going 0-28. I see them, at worst going 13-15, maybe 14-14, just break even type of deal. But I don't see them doing any better than that either. I think they're going to perfectly be in the middle. So, and unfortunately, there's not really a lot of signings to fix this team either. Who do you sign if you're trying to build a Western roster like this? Who's even available? Nobody's really available. That's the problem. You could go poach players from Houston, from Boston, if they're willing to hand anybody over. You could see if Sleepy wants to do something in case you really don't want Kareev, but at the same time, I would take Kareev over. Kareev and Logics are essentially going to be the highlights for this team, and I feel like they can do a whole heck of a lot. It's just, they have to live up to that potential. And Logics, last season, we saw him actually live up to that potential. On Florida, he didn't get to do that, but with Toronto, he did, so hopefully he can do this. And now, but in terms of placements between these two teams, like I said, Toronto is going to be more average. Washington has a chance to flop. Yeah, unfortunately, Washington, I'm going to have to put in 13th, or not 13th, but 12th, and then Toronto in 11th, just because of the fact that there's no world where Toronto fails. There's a world where Justice fail, and they crash and burn, but there's no world where, I'm going to write Toronto. Toronto. Is that even how you spell Toronto? It is how you spell Toronto. Ha ha ha. But so, yeah. So, it's weird. But at the same time, we know that these are the bottom teams, I guess you could argue. These 10, pretty much any power ranking you're going to see, whether it be from a novice who's just having to take crap shots in the dark, looking at teams and being told strength of players, or somebody who analyzes the game, you're just like there's guaranteed to be the 1 through 10 teams are all going to be 1 through 10, and the 11 through 20 teams are all going to be 11 through 20. It's just a matter of placements for each of them. But so yeah, and also interestingly enough, I do want to bring up. Hang on, I have to hide my screen for just a moment. Gonna click. Oh, that's not what I wanted to hide. I wanted to hide that. There's totally a signal capture. But let's go to this lovely website. It's Pornhub, guys. I'm going to Pornhub. Where league teams. Alright, let's separate by division. Alright, now let's bring it back up so everybody can see. Oh, so, where is it? Overwatch League. So, of our bottom teams, how many of them, let's play the game of how many of them are in Atlantic and how many of them are in Pacific. Toronto, that's an Atlantic team. So, we're just going to go ahead and write a nice little A there. Justice, guess where you are? The Atlantic Division. Paris, you guessed it, Atlantic Division. Outlaws, who would have thought the Atlantic Division? London, Atlantic. Mayhem, Atlantic. Fuel is, interestingly enough, Pacific. Boston, Atlantic. Chengdu, interestingly enough, Pacific. And same with Valiant being Pacific. So, if we're looking just through the bottom 10 teams, 7 of them are from the Atlantic Division. And why this actually matters is because the way the Overwatch League works is 28 matches. You play 2 matches against everybody who's in your division, and you play 1 match with everybody who's not in your division. So, for example, the Atlanta Reign will have to face all of these teams twice. I did not mean to click on Boston. But so yeah, so the just for an example, Atlanta would have to face all these teams twice. New York faces all these teams twice. Philadelphia faces all these teams twice. So, while that makes these teams look better because they're pretty much going to get some very good wins because not only are these teams good, but they also have their own kind of deal going on, so on and so forth. If we look at Pacific, this is where things get fun. Because, some people are like, why is Chengdu 19th? Chengdu has the potential to do this, and this. They have to face every single one of these teams twice. And if you notice, there are 7 teams here that are within the top 10. And once again, this is the top 10 is pretty much a guarantee between the top 10 and bottom 10, as I said, are pretty much locks of teams. It's just depending on where exactly you place them. So, Guangzhou Charge, Hangzhou Spark, Los Angeles Gladiators, Vancouver Titans, Shanghai Dragons, Seoul Dynasty, and San Francisco Shock, you're facing twice. So unless you pull off some nonsense, that is a guaranteed 14 losses that Chengdu will have to take. Guaranteed 14 losses Valiant will have to take, and a guaranteed 14 losses that Dallas will have to take. And that is why Valiant is coming in 20th. Unfortunately, your rebrand's not saving you. Also, did they change the Chengdu logo? I feel like they took a little bit of black off of it. I don't know. But so, yeah. So, next week, we're going to get to cover 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. Which, it's crazy to think. But, this is where a lot of debate's going to come in. So, if you're interested in Overwatch and you're watching this on YouTube, catch this episode next week on the 15th live. Because it's going to be not a doozy, but it's going to be interesting. Because pretty much we're going to debate every team that's left outside of the San Francisco Shock, the New York Excelsior, and the Atlanta Reign. Every other team is going to be in for debate for the 6th through or the 6 through 10 positions. So, and also put your own power rankings in the comments because I think that could be fun. But I'm gonna get up out of here. Hopefully y'all enjoyed. Make sure you got the OWchies podcast loaded up on YouTube. Like I said, I'm gonna try to figure out how to put it up on Spotify as well as Apple Music. I don't know if there's a certain size I have to get to do either of those things, but I'll look into it. Until next time, this has been Megalass, and I'm chilling.